The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was reviewing quarterly reports for my property management company when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Hello, is this Victoria Martinez?" The voice was frantic, desperate. "Speaking. This is Sandra Walsh from Platinum Events. I'm your sister Isabella's wedding planner. We have a serious situation." I leaned back in my leather chair, looking out at the city skyline from my penthouse office. "What kind of situation?" "The venue payment. It's due tomorrow. $80,000. Isabella's parents promised they'd handle it, but their check bounced. Without this payment, we have to cancel the wedding. 300 guests, everything's been planned for 18 months. I stayed silent, letting her continue. "Isabella gave me your number. She said you might be able to help with a loan. The wedding is this Saturday at the Grandview Estate. Everything's already set up, the flowers, the catering, the Grandview Estate," I repeated slowly. "Yes, it's this beautiful historic mansion overlooking the harbor. Isabella fell in love with it the moment she saw it. Please, is there any way you could help? She's been dreaming of this day since she was little." I almost laughed. The Grandview Estate. The crown jewel of my real estate portfolio. The property I'd purchased 18 months ago through one of my holding companies. The same property my family had dismissed as too expensive when Isabella first mentioned wanting to get married there. "Let me think about it," I said. "I'll call you back tomorrow. Please, Ms. Martinez. Time is running out." After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long moment. 18 months ago, when Isabella announced her engagement to David, she'd been over the moon about this venue. But when she mentioned the cost to our parents, Dad had exploded. $80,000 for one day? Are you insane? We're not throwing money away on some fantasy wedding. Find somewhere reasonable. But Isabella had her heart set on it. She'd shown me the photos, the grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers, the manicured gardens, the sweeping staircase perfect for photos. She'd cried when Dad refused to even consider it. That's when I made my decision. Not just about the venue, but about a lot of things. See, my family had no idea what I actually did for a living. To them, I was still Victoria who works with computers, and never got married, and lives in that tiny apartment downtown. They saw the modest Honda I drove when I visited, the simple clothes I wore to family dinners, the way I always claimed to be getting by when they asked about my finances. They had no idea that Martinez Holdings controlled over 40 properties across 3 states. They didn't know that my tiny apartment was actually a penthouse I owned in a building I'd purchased. They couldn't fathom that their computer girl had built a tech startup at 25, sold it for $37 million at 28, and spent the next 5 years turning that money into a real estate empire worth over $200 million. And they definitely didn't know that when Isabella had her heart broken over the Grandview Estate, I'd quietly purchased it myself. My phone rang again. This time it was Mom. "Victoria, honey, did the wedding planner call you?" Her voice was tight with stress. "Yes. Thank God. Look, I know we've never asked you for anything big, but this is Isabella's wedding. Your father and we thought we had this covered, but David's family backed out of their portion last minute, and with the economy and your father's business struggling. How much exactly do you need?" $80,000. "I know it's a lot. We'll pay you back, I promise. We just need a few months to liquidate some investments." "What investments?" Dad's landscaping business was barely breaking even, and Mom's boutique had been hemorrhaging money for years. But I kept these thoughts to myself. "I see. Can you help us? Please?" Isabella is beside herself. She's locked herself in her room crying. This is her dream wedding, Victoria. Her dream venue. I let the silence stretch. In the background, I could hear Dad talking to someone, probably Isabella or David, his voice carrying that edge it got when he was stressed about money. "Let me sleep on it," I finally said. "I'll have an answer tomorrow." "Victoria, please." I said I'll have an answer tomorrow, Mom. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked out to my private terrace. The city sparkled below me, and in the distance I could just make out the lights of the Grandview Estate. My estate. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years my family had treated me like the unsuccessful one. While Isabella became a social media influencer and married her college sweetheart, while my brother Miguel started his law practice, I was just Victoria. The one who was still single at 32. The the one who drove an old car and never seemed to have money for family vacations. At every family gathering, Dad would make comments. "When are you going to find a real career, Victoria?" Or, "Your siblings have their lives figured out, maybe you should take notes." Mom was gentler but equally dismissive, always asking when I was going to settle down and start a real life. They had no idea that I'd been purposely maintaining this facade. After my startup success, I'd learned the hard way what happened when family knew you had money. Suddenly everyone had emergencies, investment opportunities, and sob stories. I'd watched it destroy other families, seen relationships crumble under the weight of financial expectations. So I'd made a choice. I kept my success quiet, maintained a modest appearance, and watched my family treat me like the failure while I built an empire in silence. But now, with Isabella's wedding hanging in the balance and my parents literally begging me for help, the time for hiding was ending. The next morning I called Sandra back at exactly 9 a.m. "Sandra, this is Victoria Martinez." "Oh, thank goodness. Did you make a decision about the loan?" "I did. But I don't think a loan will be necessary." I don't understand." "Tell me, Sandra, who exactly do you think owns the Grandview estate?" There was a pause. Well, I work with several properties, but I believe it's owned by some investment company. Martinez Holdings, I think." "That's correct." Another pause, longer this time. "Martinez Holdings. Sandra, I'm not going to loan my sister money for her wedding venue. Instead, I'm going to give her the wedding as a gift. No charge. But the contract clearly states, I'm the owner, Sandra. Victoria Martinez, Martinez Holdings. I've owned the Grandview estate for 18 months. And as the owner, I'm waiving all fees for my sister's wedding." The silence on the other end was deafening. You own the venue?" "I own the venue. I also own the catering company you're using. Prestigious Affairs is one of my subsidiaries. The floral arrangements are coming from Botanical Dreams, which I purchased last year. The photography studio, the transportation service, even the hotel where the out-of-town guests are staying, all mine. Dear God. Here's what's going to happen, Sandra. You're going to call my family and tell them that the venue situation has been resolved. Don't mention me yet. Just tell them that the owner decided to sponsor the wedding for personal reasons. Can you do that?" "Yes, absolutely, but..." "Good. Isabella will have her dream wedding. Every detail will be perfect. And Saturday morning, before the ceremony begins, I want you to gather my family in the bridal suite. All of them. Parents, siblings, extended family. Tell them the owner wants to meet them personally. Of course, Ms. Martinez. But may I ask, why the secrecy? Why not just tell them now?" I looked out my office window toward the harbor, where the Grandview estate sat like a jewel among the trees. Because my family needs to learn something about making assumptions. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. I'd spent the week putting finishing touches on everything, ensuring Isabella's wedding would be flawless. The flowers were arranged exactly as she'd dreamed, the chandeliers sparkled like stars, and the harbor view was breathtaking. I arrived early, dressed in a simple navy dress that cost more than most people's cars but looked modest enough to maintain my cover for a few more hours. I checked in with the catering staff, the photographers, and the musicians, making sure every detail was perfect. At 10 a.m. I knocked on the bridal suite door. "Come in," Isabella called. I entered to find my sister in her wedding dress, looking absolutely radiant. Mom was adjusting her veil and my Aunt Carmen was taking photos. Isabella's bridesmaids were getting their final touch-ups in the adjoining room. "Victoria." Isabella threw her arms around me. "I can't believe you made it so early. And oh my God, can you believe what happened? The venue owner just gave us the wedding. Like everything. Mom said you were going to help with a loan, but then this miracle happened." "A miracle," I repeated, hugging her back. "You look beautiful, I say." "I know, right? I mean, what are the odds? Sandra said the owner just decided to sponsor us out of nowhere. Apparently, it's some investment company that does charity work." Mom appeared at my elbow. "Victoria, honey, thank God this worked out. I know you said you'd help, but honestly, we weren't sure you had that kind of money anyway. This is so much better. Now you don't have to worry about it." I smiled. "Where is everyone?" Sandra said she wanted to meet the whole family before the ceremony. "Dad's downstairs with David and the groomsmen. Miguel and his wife are around somewhere. Carmen and the cousins are here." Sandra said she'd come get us when the owner arrives. Isabella spun around in her dress. I still can't believe this is happening. At the Grandview estate. Do you know how exclusive this place is? Tell me about it. The owner must be incredibly wealthy. Sandra mentioned they own multiple properties and businesses. Can you imagine having that kind of money? Being able to just give away an $80,000 wedding like it's nothing? Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Sandra peeked in, looking nervous. Excuse me, ladies, but the owner has arrived and would like to meet everyone in the main parlor downstairs. If you could gather the family. Isabella clapped her hands. This is so exciting. I get to thank them personally. We made our way downstairs, Isabella careful with her dress on the grand staircase. The main parlor was elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Dad was already there with David and Miguel, all three men looking slightly uncomfortable in their formal wear. So where is this mysterious benefactor? Dad asked as we entered. I want to shake their hand and thank them properly. Actually, Sandra said, glancing at me, she's already here. Everyone looked around the room, confused. I don't see anyone, Mom said. Sandra cleared her throat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the owner of the Grandview estate and the sponsor of today's wedding, Victoria Martinez. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. Isabella was the first to speak. What? Victoria Martinez, Sandra repeated, is the owner of Martinez Holdings, which purchased this property 18 months ago. She's also the owner of Prestigious Affairs Catering, Botanical Dreams Floral Design, and several other companies providing services for your wedding today. Dad's face had gone pale. That's impossible. I stepped forward, pulling out my phone. With a few taps, I brought up the property ownership documents, all clearly showing my name and company. Dad, remember 18 months ago when Isabella fell in love with this place? When you said it was too expensive and refused to even consider it? He nodded slowly, still looking stunned. I bought it that same week. But how? Mom whispered. You work with computers. You drive that old Honda. You live in that tiny apartment. I drive a 2019 Honda because it's reliable and draws less attention. My tiny apartment is a penthouse I own in a building I purchased 2 years ago. And I don't just work with computers. I built a tech company, sold it for $37 million, and used that money to build a real estate empire worth over $200 million. Miguel dropped into a chair. $200 million. Give or take. It fluctuates with the market. Isabella was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But you always said you were just getting by. You never come on family vacations, you never buy expensive gifts. Because every time someone in this family has money, everyone else suddenly has emergencies and investment opportunities. I wanted to build my wealth without constant pressure and requests. Dad found his voice. You've been lying to us for years. I've been protecting myself. And honestly, I've been protecting you too. Do you know how many families are destroyed when one member becomes significantly wealthier than the others? But we're family, Mom protested. Are we? Because for the last 5 years, every family gathering has included comments about my lack of direction and my failure to launch. Dad, you literally told people at Christmas that you worried I'd end up homeless. Dad's face flushed. I was trying to motivate you. By humiliating me. By making everyone think I was the family failure. We didn't know, Isabella said softly. We thought you were struggling. I was letting you think that. Because it was easier than dealing with the constant requests for money that would have come if you knew the truth. Sandra cleared her throat gently. I'll give you all some privacy. Victoria, the ceremony starts in 2 hours. Everything is ready when you are. After she left, the room fell silent again. David, poor guy, looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. This was not how he'd imagined meeting his extended new family. So what now? Miguel asked. Are you going to hold this over us forever? I'm not going to hold anything over anyone. Isabella gets her dream wedding exactly as she wanted it. Every detail, every flower, every photograph, it's all a gift. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Victoria, this is too much. I can't accept. You're not accepting anything. I'm giving it freely. Because despite everything, I love you. I love all of you. But things are going to be different now. Different how? Mom asked. No more comments about my life choices. No more assumptions about my finances. No more treating me like the family disappointment. Dad was quiet for a long moment. Then, I owe you an apology. You owe me several. But today isn't about that. Today is about Isabella's wedding. But why didn't you just tell us? Isabella asked. We could have celebrated your success instead of making you feel bad. Could you have? Really? Or would it have become about what I could do for everyone else? The question hung in the air. We all knew the answer. What's done is done, I continued. Today we focus on celebrating Isabella and David. Tomorrow we figure out how to be a real family again. Isabella walked over and hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for the wedding. For everything. Over her shoulder I saw Mom wiping away tears. Dad was shaking his head, probably still processing everything. Miguel was looking at his phone, probably Googling Martinez Holdings to confirm everything I'd told them. There's one more thing, I said as Isabella stepped back. The honeymoon. You had to cancel Bora Bora because of the budget, right? Isabella nodded sadly. We're just going to do a long weekend somewhere local. I pulled an envelope from my purse and handed it to David. First-class tickets to Bora Bora. 2 weeks at the Four Seasons. Wedding gift. David opened the envelope with shaking hands. This is too much. It's what family does for each other. When they can. The ceremony was perfect. Isabella looked radiant walking down the aisle, Dad visibly emotional as he gave her away. The vows were beautiful, the music flawless, and the harbor view provided a stunning backdrop for photos. During the reception I found myself actually enjoying my family's company for the first time in years. Without the underlying tension of their disappointment in me, without the constant barbs about my apparent lack of success, we could just be together. Dad approached me during dinner. Victoria, I need to apologize properly. I've been an ass. Yes, you have. He winced. I thought I was helping. I thought maybe if I pushed you, you'd find direction. I had direction, Dad. I just wasn't sharing it with you. I understand why now. And I'm sorry. For all of it. I studied his face. He looked genuinely remorseful, older somehow. I'm sorry too. For the deception. I could have found a better way. What happens now? Can we start over? We can try. But it has to be different. Real respect, real communication. No more assumptions about anyone's life or choices. He nodded. Deal. Later, as the evening wound down and the guests began to leave, Isabella found me on the terrace overlooking the harbor. Penny, for your thoughts, she said, joining me at the railing. Just thinking about the last few years. How different things could have been. Do you regret it? Hiding everything. I considered the question. Some of it. I regret that we lost time. I regret that you felt like you couldn't have your dream wedding. But I don't regret protecting myself. I get it now. About the money changing everything. David's brother won the lottery a few years ago. Only 2 million, but suddenly everyone in his family had sob stories and emergencies. It almost destroyed their relationships. Exactly. So what's the plan going forward? Are you going to keep pretending to be poor? I laughed. No more pretending. But also no more being treated like the family ATM. I'll help when I choose to help for reasons I choose. Not because someone thinks they're entitled to my money. That's fair. She leaned against the railing. You know what's funny? You've been the most successful person in our family this whole time, and we've been treating you like the failure. God, we're idiots. You're not idiots. You just made assumptions based on incomplete information. Still. She was quiet for a moment. Thank you, Victoria. Not just for today, but for showing me that there are different ways to be successful. Different ways to live. You're welcome. As the last guests departed and the staff began cleaning up, I stood alone in the ballroom where my sister had just had her dream wedding. The chandeliers still sparkled, the flowers still perfumed the air, and through the windows, the harbor stretched out into the distance. Tomorrow my family would wake up to a new reality. The dynamics that had defined us for years were shattered, and we'd have to build something new in their place. It wouldn't be easy and it wouldn't happen overnight. But for the first time in years I felt hopeful about my family relationships. Because now they knew who I really was. And despite everything they were still here. My phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Just wanted to say thank you one more time. Not just for the wedding but for trusting us with the truth. Love you, sis. I smiled, typing back, love you too. Enjoy Bora Bora. As I walked to my car, my real car, the Tesla Model S I kept parked at the estate, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of pretending, of constantly monitoring my words and actions to maintain my cover, was finally gone. I had my family back. And this time they knew exactly who they were getting. The drive back to my penthouse took me along the coastal highway, the harbor lights twinkling below. Tomorrow I'd start the process of being myself with my family for the first time in years. It would be complicated, there would be adjustments and mistakes and probably some arguments. But tonight my sister had gotten her dream wedding. And I had gotten something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. The chance to be authentic with the people I loved most. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you give yourself.